Hi everyone, welcome back. Carrying on with some more homeostasis today, looking at the kidney. I'm going to be splitting this up into two videos because the kidney is quite involved. So today we're just going to be looking at what the kidney does generally, why we need them, so what the function is in the body, and how kidneys filter blood through a process called ultrafiltration. So as always, grab some pens, grab some paper and follow along with me. Your kidney's main role in your body is to filter your blood, to take out any products that you don't want and put them into your urine, and then put stuff that we want back into the blood. So let's have a look at it generally first. So its role is to be the filtering part of what we call the urinary system. Now, urinary probably make you think of urine because that's what the kidney produces. Your kidneys filter a number of things to and from your blood. So these include water, you have glucose, you have something called urea, which we'll talk about in a second. And you also filter out ions. Ions you might know from chemistry as charged particles. Here they're things like salt, for example, and sodium is a very important ion in your body. So the kidney's role is the filtering of these substances to make urine. So if we take a look at urea thirst, urea is the substance that primarily makes up urine apart from things like ions and water, and urea comes from the proteins in our diet. So I'm going to draw out the process and talk through it. During digestion, you break down protein molecules into their individual amino acids. Most of these amino acids are sent off to be used for protein synthesis or for, growth and repair. Any that are left over, or excess as we call them, are absorbed and filtered by the liver. And inside the liver will turn those amino acids into ammonia, which is very toxic. This process has a strange name, but an important one. It's called deamination. Now, having toxic substances in your body isn't the greatest idea that the liver ever had, God love it. So what happens is the liver redeems itself and converts that ammonia immediately into a substance called urea. And then that urea is lost from your body through either sweat or as part of your urine. Now, we can't control our sweat glands, so this is an uncontrolled loss of urea, and urine is a controlled loss of urea, but we'll look at controlled and uncontrolled in just a second. So make sure you've got this process down and that you can able to rattle it off as a little story, as bullet points in an exam. As the kidney's main role is to remove excess water, amongst other things, out of your blood, we've got to think about, why do we care? Why do we care about how watery we are? I'm sure we all remember that statistic that we heard, not sure where though, but everyone's heard it, that the body is 70% water, which is true, but not for your entire life. You sort of start off more watery when you're young. Babies, toddlers are about 70% water. But as you get through your life, you dry out, shrivel up a bit. It is true that we are made up a lot of water though. So humans are, let's say, 50 to 70% water, depending on your age. There's all the water. So now we know our bodies contain lots of water, so why do we care? Now, if you think back to what you would have learned right near the beginning of biology when we looked at cell transport, you should be able to link water with osmosis. Remembering, of course, osmosis is the process where water moves from an area of high concentration of water to low concentration of water through a partially permeable membrane. In our case, in our bodies, our partially permeable membranes are all of our cell walls, all of our cell membranes, and our cells need water to function. So if we think about osmosis, this starts to make a bit more sense. So I'm going to draw the diagrams out and then talk through them. If we imagine a scenario where you can't control the amount of water that you're taking in or losing from your body, what's going to happen is that's going to throw off osmosis in your body. So two scenarios, we've got having too much water in our blood or in our sort of cellular fluids. And then the other scenario is not enough water. What's going to happen in the too much water side is you've still got stuff that's dissolved in that water. If you're talking about cells, you have all the ions, all the glucose that's in there for respiration. So we are still going to have dissolved substances as well. And they will be about equal depending on if we have not enough or too much. Remember, the partially permeable or semi-permeable membrane will stop anything that's too big from crossing, so it's only going to allow the water to move through. So if we've got a scenario where there's too much water, what's going to happen is this is going to cause this side of the, hang on, I should make sure, remember to put this dissolved stuff inside the actual cell we're talking about as well. So if we got the scenario where we have too much water, what's going to happen is this is going to be more dilute, or as we're using the proper term, we're going to say this is hypotonic. So hypotonic, more watery. And then inside the cell, we're going to have a hypertonic, so a more concentrated, less watery condition. So what's going to happen is water is going to immediately, whether it likes it or not, move from the outside of the cells and inside, and that cell's going to swell up and potentially burst, and that's bad because you need cells to be alive. On the other scale though, if you don't have enough water, that's going to make this side hypertonic, this side hypotonic, and the opposite's going to happen. So what's going to happen? This cell's going to shrivel up. That also is bad because that will cause the cells to become damaged. And if there's not enough water, you can't carry out certain chemical reactions that are essential to life. So the reason why we care about our kidneys is all to do with osmosis. So if osmosis is thrown off, if you end up with not being able to control your water levels, you'll end up with either too much water, and water will go into your cells when it's not needed or not wanted. Or if you have not enough water, water's going to be taken out of your cells and into the surrounding areas, and that's also not a great scenario for proper cell function. So your kidneys' job is to sort of keep your water levels in this happy medium, and we'll look at water control a little bit more detail in another lesson. But for now, we're just going to say that the kidneys help to balance these two scenarios. Your excretory system, or the waste removal systems in your body, don't just include water. They include other means, and they're lost in various ways. Some are controlled and some aren't. So I'm going to write ourselves a list of the different substances that your body controls and how those are controlled through controlled means and uncontrolled means. You lose a lot of water through urine, but you also lose a lot of water when you breathe. So the reason why when you breathe on a window on a cold day, for example, is not just due to condensation, but because you have water vapor in your breath. So every time you breathe out, you're breathing out a small amount of water. If you're anything like me, you'll lose a lot of water during sweat. And of course, if you drink lots of water, you're going to need to go for a wee, so urine as well. Your urea is lost through sweat and urine. Glucose is always removed as it's needed for respiration. The only time you find glucose in your urine is if you were diabetic, for example. And ions are lost through sweat or urine. Now, not all of these losses can be controlled through homeostasis. So any that I'm going to put let's see, a nice, so any I'm going to put a nice orange dot by are controlled, so your body is able to raise or lower the rate of loss. Anything that I give let's say, yeah or no, you're going to yellow. Let's say a blue dot will be uncontrolled, so you lose it whether you like it or not. So there you go. So anything to do with sweating, exhaling is uncontrolled, and anything to do with urine production, which goes via your kidneys, is controlled. Right, let's dive straight in and look at the kidneys themselves. Now, your kidneys are more complicated than they might look on the surface. If you just look at some kidneys in the shops, or Google it if you're so inclined, you'll just see kidneys as being a sort of boring red wobbly organ. But if you were to dissect them, and if we ever come back from quarantine times, we might, you'll see that inside they have different layers, not like an onion, but more like just colour variants. So you don't need to know the exact structures, but I'm going to draw them here just because it's interesting, and it'll help you understand what we're talking about a little bit later on. So your kidney, if you were to slice it in half long ways, would be made up, it wouldn't look exactly like this, because again, it's so jam-packed full of capillaries that it's hard to make out these layers. But you have three main parts. You have blood vessels, which I've now just remembered I need to draw, that bring blood in. So that blood that needs to be filtered, it's going to pass through this weird network in a part called the cortex and medulla. That's where it's going to be filtered, and then the filtered urea or urine, and it goes down here to form urine in the bladder. Inside this main bit, this sort of dark purpley part of your kidney, you have some weird structures called nephrons. They kind of look like, I don't know, a hair clip on its side, and then surrounding those nephrons you've got a whole buttload of capillaries. You've got millions of them in there. That's why the kidneys look such a dark pinkish, purplish, reddish, because that's just the sheer number of blood vessels that are in there. So this thing is our kidney tubule, where the magic happens. And by magic I mean we. They've got a proper name, it's called a nephron. This is the bit that's really involved, and will get a bit confusing. So please make sure you play through this part of the video as many times as you need, because you need to know how this ultrafiltration process works. So how do you go from having substances in your blood that you need to filter to making wee-wee? So I'm going to get rid of these bits on here because we're going to need as much space as we need, and then copy along with me as always. Okay, so we're going to start by drawing out the main vessels inside the kidney. Remember, this is happening in just that part, the nephron. So we're taking like a little cross section from in here and blowing it up. So you've got millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of capillaries inside your kidneys. And remember, you've got 2 kidneys. Some of the walls inside those capillaries, or all the walls rather, are partially permeable, but some areas are more permeable than others, which you'll have a look at in A level. So this is our capillary. Any dotty lines you see, that's partially permeable, so only lets certain substances through. And anything that is in red is capillary. Lying really, really close, almost, twisting around, hugging the capillary, are these nephrons. So if you imagine this is sort of the end of one branch. And again, partially permeable membrane in there as well, hence the dotty line. The first thing that happens when this blood enters the kidney is the blood is carrying certain substances that we want. So we're going to colour code them just to make life easier. We've got urea, which I'm going to have as like a little purple U. We've got glucose. We have water. And lastly, our ions. Right, so your blood's coming in, let's use red. The blood's coming in, carrying these substances that your body wants or wants to get rid of, and they will move from the capillary into the kidney tubule. Everything moves whether they like it or not. This process is called filtration. So your urea is going to move into the tubule, the glucose is going to move in, your water is going to move in, and your ions are going to move in. Okay, what happens next then is some of these substances your body wants and wants to keep hold of. Some of them they'll want to keep hold of in certain conditions, and some of them they just want to get the heck out of there. So we'll start with the one that the body always wants to keep, which is glucose. Remember, glucose is used in respiration. So glucose is quickly, oh dear, I've made a little error. So that glucose is quickly reabsorbed into the capillary. The urea is a completely waste product that we don't want, so that is always going to be put straight into or taken out of the tubule into the bladder to form urine. and then your urine, goes off to your bladder and off to the toilet when the time is right. Your water and ions are a bit strange, they're variable. So depending on how, dehydrated you are or what sort of food you've been eating. So ions will be all sorts of things. Sodium, for example, you'll have magnesium, you'll have potassium. So depending on your body is in need of that particular time, it will go, more will be put back into your capillaries to go out your kidney and off to your body. And with water, again, depends on whether your body is triggered water regulation. So you're going to, only if you need more water do you keep it. If not, you just get rid of it in your urine. So that's why on days where you drink a lot of water, you not only wee a lot more, but your wee is sort of clearer, less watery, because more of that water is moving straight from the tubules back into the blood. So these will only go to the urine if your body doesn't need them. Otherwise, they'll be reabsorbed back into the blood. And now, because this reabsorption process only takes in stuff that your body wants at the time, it's called selective reabsorption. And that, in a nutshell, or rather on a whiteboard, is how filtration works in the kidney. So you need to know the filtration stage, the stuff coming in, all gets dumped into the nephron or the kidney tubule. Then you need to know what gets moved where and why. So glucose is always moved back into the blood to be used for respiration. Urea is always moved into urine because it's a waste product. And water and ions will either go into the capillary, or more will go into the capillary if your body needs them, and less will go into the capillary if your body doesn't need them, so they're excess. So again, just like with the stages of how your protein is turned into urea, you need to know the stages of how this works. So again, use a diagram, learn some bullet points. That is also the end of everything for today. So check back soon for the next part on the kidney, where we're going to look at problems with the kidney and dialysis and how water is controlled in your body. Make sure you got your notes, check on Google Classroom, see if there's a quiz, and I will see you all very soon.